What is up? Man, I am fired up. Now my hair looks all funny. But that's always the way with me, right? As soon as I jump on camera, I feel like my hair looks all goofy. Let's invite some friends, shall we? This is going to be, if I can get the articulation of what I want to share with you guys out, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be fire. So, I don't want to even waste too much more time with inviting friends. Whoops. There we go. Hey, Bob. What's happening, brother? Okay, Patricia Mayo, welcome aboard. Patricia, I think you'll enjoy what I've got cooking today. So here it is in a nutshell. The problem with your guru is the problem with everybody you look up to. Well, not everybody. There are some people with real integrity. And so how do I want to frame this? I don't mean to say, oh yes, of course, Bob, coffee. I don't mean to say that everyone who is in the space of being an expert in something is deceptive. That's not my intent. However, some of them are. And even when they're not, I really want you to, hey, Mike, what's up, brother? Brother. And Chris Cancel. Chris, you'll like this one. I really want you to pay attention to this because for me, when I was able to capture this and articulate it, it really, really was profound. And like it's a big deal. And so here's the thing. We're going to start at the macro level, the wide, big, way up in this, broad-reaching level. And then we're going to go down to, quite frankly, how you allow yourself to get duped sometimes, and how I allow myself to get duped sometimes, and how we allow ourselves to get duped sometimes. So at the broadest level, we need to talk about stories. And this, I really want you to pay attention here. I really want you to, if I succeed here, I will illustrate for you. This is a plea for a return to critical thinking. Got it? What I'm doing here today is a plea to you for a return to critical thinking. Because the lack of critical thinking is a huge component, hi Jackie, in how we find ourselves lost, how we get duped, how we fall for it. So pay attention. At the global level, the macro level, here are the influencing factors. Every culture, cultures in the world, cultures in history, and every culture, including the culture of online entrepreneurs, the culture of healers, the culture of marketing people, whatever it is, right? Every culture, by the time you get into it, is laced with pre-existing, baked-in, undetectable narratives, aka stories. Now, I really want you to just stop and get that piece, okay? So you come into the online space, right? And you want to be a coach. And as soon as you come in and you start friending other coaches and you start having your community be people who have been in the space longer than you, and you start to learn the language, right? So you start to learn the language of funnels and 10xing and the language of purpose and motivation and the language of serving and right, all of these things. But here's what you never know. Here's what you never cognite on. Bob says, who started the stories? Bob, you're tracking well. Now watch this. So it doesn't matter so much who started the stories. But what happens, a culture is very little more than a collection of agreed upon stories. Whoa! Let me say that again. A culture is very little more than a collection of agreed upon stories. Okay? So we come into the space, and in order to feel the satisfaction of being accepted into the tribe, remember, we're pack animals, we're tribal in nature. And so, in order to feel that, we have to subscribe to these stories. In other words, we have to learn to start speaking the language. That's how other people in the space identify us as one of their own. That's how we get affirmation and acceptance. So, this is powerful, it's subconscious. Just one second here. Ah, there we go, way better. And it's something we all do. It's something that is, our survival is dependent on this from birth. We are taught how to fit into tribes, right? Here's the thing. Now watch this. So you come in and you immediately, subconsciously, without really thinking about it, without applying critical thinking because you didn't know better, you start to embody the stories that define the culture you wish to be a part of. Now, possibly with bad intent and possibly through no fault of their own, some people see how to have influence by manipulating those stories. Some people glean, most of us glean, how we can have influence within our community by manipulating these stories. Okay, remember, we're still at the broad level here, the macro level. I'm going to take it right down to you, your guru, your ads guy, your Facebook funnel guy, and everything else, okay? So, where are we now? We are at the point where you've entered into the culture. And remember, a culture is very little more than a collection of agreed upon narratives. Okay? And so you come in and you start to try to interact in the culture. And what that means in the case of entrepreneurs and online service providers is we try to build up our reputation, earn our credibility, and sell. Because that's what we do, right? Never consciously realizing that we have subscribed to a bunch of beliefs that we never ran through critical thinking filters. Here is where it gets interesting. By the way, you guys should be like Patricia and put likes across the screen. We're exchanging value here. I'm giving you something very powerful. In exchange for that, you should show some appreciation. It takes almost nothing from your thumbs, right? Think about that. Why wouldn't you show appreciation via some likes and thumbs ups and smiley faces and things like that? It helps me. It promotes the algorithm. It gets blood flowing through this. Critical thinking is critical, says Joe. Yes, meta. So anyway, here is what comes of what I'm going to call blindly subscribing to the stories of a given culture. We can get lost, we do get lost often in spiritual, thank you, spiritual navel gazing. What do I mean by that? Or entrepreneurial navel gazing, right? The thing is the stories are all framed in a way that puts us in a position of feeling like there's more that we need. In other words, the stories are all framed in sort of a future infinitive tense, right? I'm going for this. I'm building this. I'm going to achieve this. I'm working on this. Tracking so far? So critical thinking would save us pain and trouble and strife and time if we were to say to ourselves, let me think critically, let me from time to time examine these assumptions. Let me check and see if it's still valid that these things that I'm trying to do are in the future. Now, our money story is a big place this plays out, right? Big place this plays out. Our money story, Holy crap. Like, we're always thinking in the future infinitive with our money story. But we're also always thinking in the future infinitive with our work and success stories, which of course are related to our money story. And here is where the gurus come in, and here is where it gets tricky. Because the price of fitting into a given culture is sort of acceptance of the stories that define that culture. Let's really slow down here. In order to be part of the group, you have to accept the stories that the group believes. Now, it's very easy for someone to come along with an agenda, which is typically to sell you something, right? And all they have to do to trigger that sense that you haven't gotten there yet, that sense that there's something else you need, is to simply offer you a false premise that fits within the stories of that culture. Here's what I'm talking about. Let's say your goal is to make a lot of money. Let's say that you're a good person, right? Let's say that you've got the integrity piece, the transparency piece. You've got those pieces. You're there. And your goal now is to, with the person you've become that you're good with, you're not going to be corrupted. You're not going to be suddenly made evil by the influx of a lot of money. You're not going to be soullessly chasing the dollar until your dying day, right? And you're going to have to apply critical thinking to your person now to know if that's you or not. Let's say that's you. That's me, by the way. That's me. And all that has to happen for a guru to sort of get a hook is to float a false narrative for you. Now, that could look like, so my goal is to make $1 million, says you. The guru says, that's great. What's your purpose? What's your big mission in life? Right there. You never knew it happened. You never felt it because it's so commonplace. But they just gave you a completely false premise. And unless you are fast enough and insightful enough and a critical thinker enough, you'll never catch the switch. Just like Fight Club, right? Do you remember Fight Club where Brad Pitt, Tyler Durden is voiceover narrating and he says, or Edward Norton is voiceover narrating and he says, just like that, the film switches, or the film switches, but the movie goes on. Nobody notices, right? That's what it is. Because suddenly you guys have entered into an agreed upon story, whether it's true for you or not. And specifically, I want to address that story. I want to address that story of the mythical need to be perfectly clear at all times on your purpose. Right? So your ads guy is going, the cabin loses pressure during the changeover. Exactly. So the ads guy, coming from a position of seeing every problem that people online have through the need for better ads management, is going to look at your problem and most likely offer the narrative or speak from within the narrative that we've all agreed upon to be part of the entrepreneurial culture, to speak to the narrative of, well, obviously, if only you had more clients, which is a result of more ads and better ads, you'd be okay. Never acknowledging, whether by hook or by crook, whether from innocence or from deceit, that ads is only one part of the equation. In short, never acknowledging to you that, in fact, it may not be about your ads. Many of us make many thousands of dollars online organically. Therefore, Whether ads are an effective strategy or not, they're clearly not the only strategy. But the ads guy will see it that way because it is in his or her best interest to sell you their service. Now, let's talk about the purpose piece that I just sort of floated out there to tantalize you guys. Hi, C. Good to see you, C. Who else do we got? Dino. Oh, Dino, you honor me, sir. Okay. So, me to the guru. Well, I want to make $1 million. The guru to me. That's great. What's your purpose? Motherfucker, who says I have to have a purpose clearly defined right now in order to move forward? Did you hear that? Let me say it again. Motherfucker, who says I have to have a purpose clearly defined right in this minute in order to move forward? Now, I want you to think about this. How many different times in your life have you had a sure sense of your purpose, and how many times has that changed? And by the way, Dino, yes, it is a Maslow's hammer type of a scenario. Think about it, though. Do you mean to tell me that no one can move forward into their growing and burgeoning success without always having a clear purpose focused? So I call bullshit on that. I aggressively call bullshit on that because just as I aggressively call bullshit on ads being the only thing, I aggressively call bullshit on the current emerging narrative that you're only one funnel away. That is manipulative, it is duplicitous, it is false advertising. You're only one funnel away is, in my mind, the worst kind of manipulative, false promise making. Think about it. See, you didn't apply critical thinking to it. Because if you had applied critical thinking to it, you would have realized that making a promise, selling makes sales, damn it. Yeah. Making a promise that you're only one funnel away has a built-in safety. It has a built-in release valve for the person who's promising it. They can simply say, you are only one funnel away. That just wasn't the right funnel. Get it? So, maybe you're only one funnel away. Maybe Facebook ads can solve your problem. Maybe you need your purpose in this moment to be clearly defined. But maybe you don't. The trick is to be critical enough in your analysis and self-reflective enough that you can look at these assumptions and you can make good, educated, smart guesses as to if and when they apply to you. Okay? But because we don't know what I'm talking about now, we blindly follow. Now, so much springs from this blind following that causes us stress and anxiety. For one thing, because we don't apply critical thinking, we are more susceptible to the shiny object syndrome. Now, the shiny object syndrome may not seem too damaging to you, but let's borrow from Fight Club once again, and let's use the, on a long enough timeline, everyone's probability of survival drops to 0, right? What does that mean? That means that ultimately we're all going to die. And shiny object syndrome, all it does is take your time from you. Any accomplished person in business, entrepreneurship, etc., will tell you that getting their time back is the most powerful thing they can do. These people are not susceptible and subject to shiny object syndrome because they know how important their time is. So a little bit of shiny object syndrome, which is how you experience it in the moment, doesn't seem like too big of a deal. It's like, oh, there's this over here. Oh, there's this over here. But it turns into, ready for this? Entrepreneurial navel gazing. Chasing one thing after another, after another, after another, never bringing a rabbit home for supper, but running through the field all day long. All of this could have been avoided through some critical thinking, through some analysis and reflection. I had an experience like this recently where I told a group of people, I am 100% committed to $100,000 months because I have improved the other dimensions of my life, and now I want to raise my financial dimension up to those other levels so that I lose the intent and the energetic coefficient of drag created by having one thing lagging behind the others. Immediately, the question came back to me, what's your purpose? Now, in that moment, I wasn't fast enough. The reason I can share this with you now is because I felt something wrong. In that moment, I felt something sickly, something manipulative in that moment. But I wasn't able to unpack it until later, and I realized the whole question when I talk about money of saying, what's your purpose, is a false narrative. My purpose has changed so many times in my life. And like many of us, to now borrow again from Maslow, I tried to rush right to purpose before I had the other levels of Maslow's hierarchy locked down. Let me say that one again. If you are at Maslow's level 1 or 2, where you're worried about shelter and survival and money and food, you can't jump right to self-expression. Sorry if you don't like that, but that is the truth. And trying to do that will cause you to spin your wheels in deepening and ever-clenching frustration. You can't get there from here. But through work and focus and commitment, you can turn yourself into the person who can get there from here. Please tell me you're tracking this. I'm pretty much giving away the secret of the entrepreneurial universe right now. Okay? Engage critical thinking. Be aware of the narratives of the culture of entrepreneurship that we have all subscribed to. Learn how and when to question them. Okay? And above all else, develop the ability to really trust your instincts, your intuition, your gut. Because I developed that ability, I was able to reflect on the situation that I just shared with you, unpack it, and come to you now with what I honestly consider to be a game-changing insight for those of us in this world. Because there are people who float those false premises all the time. And sometimes it's manipulative, sometimes it's just because they don't know better. But when you get trapped in one of those false premises, it can cost you literally years of time. And all you need is the shift from I'm getting ready to I'm ready now. All you need is the shift from I completely subscribe to this ideology and this dogma to I trust my gut. Guys, I have to get on a call. So sorry to just sort of drop that heaviness on you and then bail. But I've got to go. I've got a call to take. And so I thank you guys for joining in, and I'll see you tomorrow.